I was absolutely shocked the way we treated the Iraqis. You know, we were incredibly aggressive against them, and you know, I mean, was that really right? Couldn't we have done that at different? I'm being sarcastic, by the way. Of course, we're aggressive against the Iraqis. They were, you know, they invaded Kuwait. They were threatening our oil supplies. They were threatening the world order, and of course, you know, it was the job of our armed forces to defeat the enemy. It is my job to, you know, go out in the marketplace and win. And we, you know, run ads that compare our products to the competitors' products. We don't lie about that. We just say we can do this, they can't. We name the competition. It's fact-based advertising, and we say very clearly that we, you know, that we're faster, and these tests prove it. We're more reliable, and these tests prove it. We're more economical, and so we'll name a competitor. That's considered. That's not terribly, you know, even though the facts are true, it's considered a little bit rude by some people. I don't think it's immoral. I think that we're giving true facts to customers, giving valuable information to customers so they can make better decisions. It is Bill Gates' job to make Microsoft the biggest company on earth. That's what he's paid for. It's my job for Oracle to move from the #2 software company in the world to become the #1 software company in the world. That's my job. That's what I'm paid for. If I'm not aggressive enough in the pursuit of that, if I'm not successful in the pursuit of that, I should be gotten rid of. If the general running Desert Storm is not aggressive enough and successful enough in the pursuit of that goal, he should be fired. The corporation's primary goal is to defeat the competition in the marketplace. I think that, you know, my primary function is to have Oracle, you know, is to make Oracle successful, to make it a good and interesting place to work, because we don't want people to leave. People, you know, this is America. People can change jobs, and they'll go, and people like to work with other intelligent and interesting people. They like to do interesting things, Oracle, we have fantastic salary scales. I think we're the highest paying company in Silicon Valley. We have wonderful benefits, all of these things. But again, don't mistake any of that for altruism. You know, that is in our interest to retain our employees. Their job, my job, is to build better products than the competition, sell those products in the marketplace, and eventually supplant Microsoft and move from being #2 to #1. That is our reason for being.
I was the vice president in charge of software development. It was all very cutting edge and challenging and cool. I liked my work most of the time, but I didn't love it. I searched and I searched, but I just could not find a software engineering job that I loved as much as I loved sailing. So I tried to create one. I put together a plan to start my own company. That way I could completely control my work environment. I would hire the most talented programmers I knew, and we would all work together on the most interesting and challenging software projects. My goal was to create the perfect job for me, a job I truly loved. I never expected the company to grow beyond 50 people. So maybe I really did lack ambition or vision back then. I don't know. It was a long time ago, and I was very young. Anyway, today Oracle employs around 150,000 people. But when I started, it was not my intention to build a big company. What happened? Well, at first, we did exactly what we set out to do. Hired the most talented software engineers in Silicon Valley. We assembled an all-star team of gifted programmers who were among the best in the world at what they did. That team, plus one crazy idea, gave birth to a giant company. I call it a crazy idea because at the time, everyone told me it was a crazy idea. The idea was to build the world's first relational database. Several theoretical papers about relational databases had already been published, and IBM was building a prototype in their research labs. But back then, The collective wisdom of computer experts was that while relational databases could be built, they would never be fast enough to be useful. I thought all those so-called computer experts were wrong. And when you start telling people that all the experts are wrong, at first they call you arrogant, and then they say you're crazy. So remember this, graduates. When people start telling you that you're crazy, you just might be onto the most important innovation in your life. Of course, the other possibility is you're crazy.
I don't think my personality has changed much since I was 5 years old. I think, as I explained to the kids just a little while ago, probably the single most important aspect of my personality, and as far as determining my success, has been my questioning of conventional wisdom, my doubting of experts just because they're experts, and questioning of authority. And while that can be very, very painful in terms of your relationship with your parents and your relationship with your teachers, it's enormously useful in life. I was adopted within my own family when I was 9 months old. I was born in New York City. My mother was 19. She wasn't married, and really was unable to care for me. I tried until I was 9 months old, and then I was adopted by my maternal aunt and uncle in Chicago, and moved to Chicago, the south side of Chicago. You know, I'll never again complain about a bad neighborhood, moving from the Lower East Side of Manhattan to a still worse neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. So after my 9th month, I kept my mouth shut about the neighborhood. I believed until I was 12 years old that I was not adopted. I had no idea that I was adopted within my own family. So again, I don't attribute very much of my life, my personality to my adoption. I do attribute it an awful lot to my relationship with my father, who was a Russian immigrant, came here, was very, very poor, dearly loved this country as only an immigrant can, loved our government as only an immigrant can. He was a pilot in World War II, bomber pilot. He really had the philosophy, my country, right or wrong. He never questioned the government's policies, never questioned authority, and didn't really want me to question authority. I had some teachers when I was very, very young that I thought were telling me things that weren't true. And when I tried to ask questions, they basically wanted me to respond, parrot back what they said. They really weren't interested in a discourse with a child or a debate with a child. They said this was true, and you are smart if you can repeat back to me exactly what I said to you. And I had a real problem with that as well. So I had very strong authoritarian figures both in school and at home, which served as wonderful examples of how not to be. My mom was supportive, and I had a mixture of teachers. Some of the teachers were wonderful, and some of the teachers were awful. But the awful teachers served a good purpose in terms of being a bad example. All examples are good. Bad examples are useful. Good examples are useful. And it taught me to question experts, to question authority figures. Don't assume just because they're an authority or even just because they're an expert that they're right. In other words, think things out for yourself. Come to your own judgments. Don't simply conform to conventional ways of thinking, conventional ways of dressing, conventional ways of acting. That a lot of things are based on fashion. Even morality at times is based on fashion. It was once slavery was once not considered not to be immoral. People are shocked that the ancient Greeks had slaves, that we had slavery in this country as recently as 130, 140 years ago. So there are moral facts. You have to really go back to first principles and think things out for yourself, whether they're scientific principles or moral principles or business ideas or product ideas. You have to think things out for yourself. Well, I don't know if you watched the movie Independence Day, but the discourse between the father and the son in Independence Day where the father said the government knows everything. You know, the government has experts for everything. If they want HBO, they'll call you on it. Again, I don't know if you saw this, but I think it's this notion that we really can't understand, but the government is always right. We really can't understand, but our teachers are always right. We really can't understand, but our clergymen are always right. And just, you know, use them as your sole beacons in life, and don't try to figure these things out on your own, because you really can't. You're not smart enough. And just find the appropriate experts and follow their light. I think we're born slaves to reason, and it's really reason that's beaten out of us through a process of trying to please our teachers. I think we have two fundamental drives in our life. We want to be loved, and we want to please people, and we know how to think. We know how to reason, and these are often quite at odds, because we're asked to believe certain things, believe certain things are correct. You know, that we have to wear our hair a certain length and dress a certain way, and if you want to be loved, you want to be accepted by your peers, you want to be accepted by your family. And there's a tension there, and sometimes we're pleasing our parents, sometimes we're pleasing our peers, but we're often just conforming to some fashion, figuring out what the group wants from us, and then conforming to that because we want to be accepted and loved. There's this other fundamental drive inside of us where there's often tension between the two, and that is the ability to think, the ability to reason, the ability to come to conclusions as to what works and what doesn't, what's fair and what's not fair, what's right and what's wrong. And when fashion and the pursuit of love is in conflict with reason, too often fashion and the pursuit of love wins. In my case, it didn't. I did not give fashionable answers to questions. And that's why, and that's what shocks people. Because when you ask a question, you expect everyone to answer it exactly the same way. In fact, you really don't need to ask the question because this is the fashionable answer. And and whenever you give an answer that you think about it, your own answer, what you really believe to be true rather than the fashion answer, people are sometimes shocked, amused, or even horrified, depending on the question. But it's a long list of wonderful people that I've met and wonderful relationships that I work at that has enriched my life. And I suppose therein, and I think therein is the balance. There's a balance between self-exploration and building relationships with others. And that is, that's what are the important things in life. I think Winston Churchill has a wonderful quote, which is, "You make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give." I think we live. If we live intelligently, we devise a strategy to intelligently pursue happiness. And there should be a book saying the intelligent pursuit of happiness, Hitchhiker's Guide. But there isn't such a book. But there should be. And I think more than anything else, that's what all of us need, is this guide to how to intelligently pursue happiness. I mean, Jefferson guaranteed our right to do it, but he didn't give us a map. And I think we should think of altruism, giving, as a strategy for happiness. Forget whether the morality of it all, that's the right thing to do. Instead, think of it as something totally in your self-interest. If you can help others, you will feel great. The more you can help, the more intelligently you can help, the bigger lever you can get on the world to make it better, the better you will feel about yourself, the more joy you'll experience. That is the road to bliss. That is the intelligent pursuit of happiness, and that is what we should do. That is my argument for giving, not simply that it's the right and moral thing to do. It happens to also be that, but I don't find that as persuasive is that is the road to happiness.
Virtually everyone important in my life, my family, my teachers, my girlfriend, wanted me to be a doctor. Over time, their dreams became my dreams. They convinced me I should be a doctor. But as hard as I tried, I couldn't do it. After a few difficult and unhappy years as a pre-med student, it became painfully clear to me that I did not like the courses I was taking. I thought my comparative anatomy class was a perversely pointless form of psychological torture, especially the dissection labs. And I just could not make myself study something that didn't interest me. At the time, I thought I lacked discipline and that I was selfish. Maybe so. But whatever the underlying reasons, I was unable to make myself into the person that I thought I should be. So I decided to stop trying. I was 21 years old when I dropped out of college, packed everything I owned, jeans, t-shirts, leather jacket, guitar, into my car and drove from Chicago to Berkeley, California. I guess one small part of that University of Southern California dream was mine after all, the California part. Berkeley in the 1960s was at the center of everything. The anti-war movement, the free speech movement, the human rights movement. It was the perfect place for an undisciplined, selfish 20-something to begin his search for himself, a righteous cause, and a job that he loved. Everyone living in Berkeley in the 1960s opposed the Vietnam War. I was no different. It was the age of Aquarius, but I never had long hair, and I never wore love beads. I learned to play popular protest songs on my guitar, but I was never a committed, serious anti-war protester. I did find a cause, however, one I still feel passionately about today. A few hours east of Berkeley are the Sierra Nevada mountains. I fell in love with those mountains and the ineffable natural beauty of Yosemite Valley. I cared about the wilderness, and I wanted to help preserve it. I joined the Sierra Club. I became an environmentalist. During my California springs and summers, I spent most of my days in the high Sierras in Yosemite Valley, working as a river guide and a rock climbing instructor. I loved those jobs, but unfortunately, they didn't pay that well. So I also got a job working a couple of days a week as a computer programmer back in Berkeley. I had learned to program in college. I didn't love programming, but it was fun and I was good at it. And computer programming gave me the same kind of satisfaction as solving math problems and playing chess, both things I enjoyed before I became a confused teenager. At this point in my life, I thought I was making real progress on my journey of self-discovery. I had found a cause. I had a couple of jobs that I loved, and one that was fun and paid the bills. I was pretty happy with my life. My wife was not. What she saw was a college dropout who spent too much time in the mountains doing foolish things. She wanted me to work full-time as a computer programmer or go back to college and finish my degree. We compromised, sort of. I started taking classes at UC Berkeley. I took several classes, but the only one I can remember was a sailing class taught at Berkeley Marina. Once again, I fell in love and began a lifelong affair with the limitless, omnipotent Pacific Ocean. When my class was over, I wanted to buy a sailboat. My wife said this was the single stupidest idea she had ever heard in her entire life. She accused me of being irresponsible, and she told me I lacked ambition. She kicked me out, and then she divorced me. This was a pivotal moment in my life. My family was still mad at me for not going to medical school, and now my wife was divorcing me because I lacked ambition. It looked like a reoccurrence of the same old problem. Once again, I was unable to live up to the expectations of others. But this time, I was not disappointed in myself for failing to be the person they thought I should be. Their dreams and my dreams were different. I would never confuse the two of them again. I had discovered things that I loved: the Sierras, Yosemite, the Pacific Ocean. These natural wonders brought me great joy and happiness, and would for the rest of my life. I had an interesting job programming computers and more money than I needed. For the first time, I was certain that I was going to survive in this world. A huge burden of fear had been lifted. I'll never forget that moment. It was a time for rejoicing. I bought the sailboat and lived on board, just me and my cat in Berkeley Marina.